Welcome to the Addiction Solution Podcast. I'm Michelle Dunbar. Enjoy listening and watching as addiction experts Mark Sheeran and I cover controversial as well as helpful topics on addiction, how to move past it, and other related subjects. As two of the co-founders of the Freedom Model, Mark and I will give you a completely new perspective on the topics that matter to you. We will take to task the Recovery Society's lies and misinformation and replace them with facts, research, and the methods to move on from addiction struggles without 12-step meetings, rehabs, and the shackles of endless recovery. Let's escape the treatment and recovery trap together and learn to be free. Welcome to the truth. If you feel you need time away from your life to learn how to solve your substance use problem for good without distractions, 12-step meetings, or other counterproductive processes, then the St. Jude Retreat with its Freedom Model program are for you. From the moment you arrive, you'll know that this place is special, effective, and different. We won't bring you to AA meetings. We won't take away your cell phone or tablet. And yes, you can have contact with your family and friends at any time. We don't treat our guests like children or criminals like rehabs do. You'll be surrounded by open fields with mountain views. The retreat is set up to help you to relax, reset, and learn how you can solve your addiction and move on with your life. You'll be learning the world-renowned Freedom Model program directly with co-developers Mark Sheeran and Michelle Dunbar in private one-on-one sessions. You'll also have your own room with no roommates. There's no need to be uncomfortable while getting through such a vulnerable time. In addition to having your private bedroom and meals prepared by our executive chef, there's high-speed internet access so you can keep in touch with work obligations if needed. When not in class, you can enjoy one of the many amenities available, including on-site swimming pool, dry sauna, and a pond for fishing. There's also walking trails, or you can take a trip to the gym. We welcome guests from all over the world who are seeking to escape the addiction and recovery trap once and for all. Call 888-424-2626 to reserve your room today.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Addiction Solution Podcast. I'm Michelle Dunbar.
And I'm Mark Sheeran, and we are the co-developers and co-authors of the Freedom Model for Addictions.
The book.
Oh, yeah.
We have the book.
Yeah.
This is our book. You can get it on Amazon. We also have the Freedom Model for the Family that we wrote, which is also available on Amazon. That is also available in an audiobook. And we haven't said this in a while, but if you're new to the podcast and you want to check out our book, you can also get a free digital download from us directly at thefreedommodel.org. Go into our books, pick the Freedom Model for Addictions or the Freedom Model for the Family, enter coupon code FREEDOM100 at checkout. And then you can get those digital downloads for free, or they're relatively inexpensive if you want to get them on Amazon. And the audiobook is available on Audible, or you can purchase that right at our website as well, thefreedommodel.org.
That's right. And of course, you can also get it in the Freedom Model International membership for $39.95. But that has all our courses all in one place.
Yeah, it's a great value. You go to online.thefreedommodel.org. If you're watching through YouTube, it's across the bottom of the screen. You'll see all our websites. And yeah, you can have access to everything with a subscription to the Freedom Model, to online.thefreedommodel.org. The Freedom Model for the Family online program, the Freedom Model online program are all of our books and audiobook. And also once a month on Wednesdays, at the last Wednesday of the month, we have a free 2-hour, basically a class session with Mark and I for members only. You log in at any point in time between 3 and 4:30. If we don't have new people logging in, probably by about 4:30, then we usually we'll shut it down. But we've been going right till 5 every time we've done it so far. And so you just log in and have a question ready, raise your hand. It's through a Zoom conference. Raise your hand and you can talk to us directly.
Yeah.
It's pretty great, actually. So,
all right.
What are we going to talk about today, Mark?
Today, we're going to talk about the brain disease of addiction model.
Yeah, we haven't talked about that in a really long time.
Yeah. And I think I was doing a class on it here at the retreat, at the St. Jude retreat, yesterday or day before, and going through, I think it's Appendix C, maybe in the book. I don't know.
Appendix B is
Appendix
the
B.
brain disease model.
Yeah.
It debunks it.
So I was going through that with my student, and it occurred to me just how absurd it is that the supposed research that NIDA has done on this. That NIDA is the National Institute on Drug Abuse, and they are the basic creators and promoters of the propaganda that you have a broken brain.
Yep.
And that I want to frame this so that we know what we're talking about. So the theory goes like this, that you use substances heavily, which then changes the biology and your neural functioning in your brain, which then renders you incapable of saying no to future use for life. So
in other words, let me just,
Yep.
you're compelled to use. If you're triggered to use, then you can't say no. If you have one hit, one dose, one drink, then you will be using, presumably to the death.
That's right. It reignites the disease, the broken brain. And the unfortunate part about this is it's a fairly complex problem that they've created. And but here's the beauty: the solution is very simple, and I'll get into what I mean by all this. So I was teaching this student, and let's say his name is Bob, and Bob he had been in and out of treatment 3 times, 4 times, and he's like, "Oh God, I heard this hijacked brain thing constantly." And he was in the treatment mill down in Southern Florida, which is probably the worst place you could go for treatment, because it's just an insurance scam. I mean, it's unbelievable what they're doing to people. That's where the whole, patient brokering thing happened, and they call it the Florida Shuffle, and people were dying. I mean, there are a lot of kids,
and I'm
were
sure
dying.
They still are, sadly.
And so my student had gone into treatment only because his girlfriend went into treatment. He didn't even really, he partied heavy. He had a problem. I think he had some costs he was willing to pay.
He was in his 20s.
Yep, late 20s. And then all of a sudden they start teaching him that he's broken. And he said, "No, I'm really not broken.
I can take it or leave it."
And so then they kept harping on him that he would be an addict for life. And within a year, he had overdosed twice on fentanyl, and nearly died. And he goes, before treatment, I never would have even thought about. He's like, "I never did heroin. I never did fentanyl. I never did. This just wasn't something I would do." And he goes, "But I thought I was broken."
Yeah.
And they had convinced me. And that's exactly what my experience was. And I know that's right.
Yeah. Not in treatment, because I didn't go to treatment, but I was told I was broken from a very young age, mental health wise. And then I was told that I had the genes for addiction, for alcoholism, and that if I ever touched anything, that I would be addicted.
Right. It's just really dangerous talk. So this broken brain. So let's go through it. So you drink and drug heavily, you build a habit, and then they teach you that you have neural functioning that is now compromised. And so there's 2 things wrong with this theory right off the rip. First of all, your brain doesn't make your thoughts. So treatment comes from an angle. All treatment does. And a lot of the medical community comes from the angle that your biology, the neural functioning, the electrical, chemical, bloody thing in here is making thought.
That it controls you.
Right. That the biology, the neural functioning is what's controlling your, the way you frame your world, your thoughts, your loves, your desires, your memories. All these things are centered in brain tissue. Now, the brain has a very, very important part with thought. Obviously, it's an integral part, but your mind is really the operative thing that's in control. Your thoughts, the metaphysical thoughts. So they got it backwards. First of all. But regardless, let's talk about brain changes. So do drugs change the brain physically? The answer is yes.
Of course.
All right. This is important because people will say, "Oh, you're saying drugs don't do anything?" That drives me nuts.
Yeah, we've never said that.
Right.
Not even once.
Yeah, I want to hammer this because the people in our groups constantly say, "Oh, you're
well,
down."
It's not. No, there's a lot of people in our groups that get it, right? And thank
true.
God for them.
That's true.
Because they go to bat, but there are people that come into our groups that are struggling. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't like AA. They didn't like treatment. They didn't like to be told that they were broken. They didn't like that they were that somebody was trying to control them. They don't like those things, but they come into our group and then they instantly see our group as, oh, these people are telling me I can do what I want to do, basically. So that's attractive. But then the purpose of the freedom model is not to tell you, nobody should have to tell you what to do. And you can go out and get drunk and high and have no consequence. You shouldn't have consequence. Never do we say that, but they come in and the purpose of the freedom model is to show you that you're in control.
Yeah.
Period. Right.
And always have been.
And you always have been. And so we're giving you the information so that you know that you're in control, so that you can then in turn make a decision on what you really want. And because we take all the judgment out of it, it's just a confusing thing for a lot of people. And so we get people that come into our group that are like, so you're saying that drugs don't do anything, because they're going from one extreme to the other.
That's right.
And it's like, no, there's middle ground here that you're totally discounting and missing, that's where we sit.
That's a great point. So the middle ground is drugs do in this subject, drugs do change the brain.
Absolutely. They're a toxin.
Right. And so there's two ways that it affects the brain. One is as a toxic agent, right? Or as a substance that the brain basically adjusts to physically. And then there's also the action of neuroplastic change based on habit.
Right. Which happens with any habit, not just drug use.
Right. So these two ways the brain adapts to the drug. Now, the physical adaptation may result in some withdrawal with certain drugs, or some damage to the brain. And we don't discount that. We're not saying that doesn't exist. That does exist. The good news about all of that is with proper medical care or with good knowledge, you can stop and mitigate the damage. And our brain is very, very resilient. There's a lot of stuff out on the web that's misinformation. It's hyperbole. It's panic driven. It's fear driven to get you to go to detox when most of the time you don't need it. And so there's that angle where there's a brain change based on toxicity, based on the chemical action of the drug, that detox or just getting away from the drug will rectify. That's a very simple thing. That part is very simple if you understand the basics about detox and things like that and drug chemistry. The harder part to nail down that gets people confused is habit.
Yeah.
Because our habits, our desires and our behaviors change our brain constantly. And so this is where the brain disease theorists really kind of don't, they mix and match all of this into one big bowl, and they kind of stir it around and say drugs change your brain and they compel you to use. And then they use really fancy neuroimaging images, and they print them. We print them in our book. And then they say, these scans show. Well, the people at NIDA kind of got caught with the pants down in an interview with National Geographic when the lady said, and I forget, I don't think it was Nora. I think it was one of her managers under her, scientists under her, researchers. And she said, I stare at these images all day long, and it's like reading tea leaves. I just love it. And reading tea leaves is voodoo. Okay.
It's magic. It's mystical.
Yeah, yeah.
We're not knocking it. It has its place, I suppose. But
but when it comes to brain imaging, it's telling.
yeah.
Okay, that they don't know what the hell they're looking at.
But they don't.
because brain scans don't tell us what people are thinking.
No.
And so what we're talking about is brain changes that are driven by our thoughts and our habits and our behaviors, which is all thought driven and desire driven. And so what they're trying to do is map out somehow with tea leaves that they know what you're thinking. They understand that through blood flow and electricity in your brain tissue, they can hammer out and figure out how you're thinking. They can't.
No.
They can't. I mean, it's just one of those things where it's a sort of a blunt tool, and it's in most cases arbitrary. But here's what's even more scathing. Before I go into this, do you want to say anything?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So they did these studies over and over and over again with methamphetamine users, which is like the studies that they constantly point to, and people, I'll get methamphetamine users here that say, yeah, there's holes in my brain. I'm never gonna like any type of thing again, because my dopamine and serotonin have been hijacked by the drug. And there's no evidence of this. There's no evidence of this. Now, if you have legitimate disease, or you're the 1 in a million people who hit drugs so hard that there is holes in your brain from toxicity, that's an incredibly rare scenario. It is not the norm by any stretch of the imagination.
What you're talking about is basically like a closed head trauma.
Right.
Like you've done enough drugs, or maybe you had an overdose and you were deprived of oxygen for a period of time. Or, I mean, there's all kinds of ways our brain can become damaged, maybe as a direct or indirect result of intoxication. But it's a very rare case that the drug itself will physiologically damage your brain to the point where it affects you neurologically.
That's right. And it affects you to the point where you can't think, and it renders you incapable of thinking.
Yes.
Okay. So, because the brain is needed to process your metaphysical thoughts.
Yes.
That's just the way it works.
When you're severely intoxicated, that can happen at the point of severe intoxication where you're about to pass out.
Yeah.
Because
you become unconscious.
You become unconscious. It's the process of becoming unconscious.
And that's just a separation between the metaphysical and physical brain.
Exactly. Yeah. But when you wake up, you probably have a bad headache and a terrible hangover. But within a couple of days, your brain function is fully restored and you're back to doing what you do.
That's right. So you're very, very resilient.
Mm-hmm.
So with all that said, so they did these studies, and in the studies, well, first of all, before I get to the studies, I have to say that over 99% of methamphetamine or cocaine users stop.
Yes.
Okay. They stop. So there is no disease present of compelled use. That literally takes the whole problem of their studies and how fraudulent they are, and highlights that. Yeah. It highlights the fact that
nearly everyone, more than 9 out of 10 people stop.
Yeah. And they do it with or without treatment. It really is inconsequential.
Most of them do it. 8 out of 10 do it without treatment.
That's right. In the population as a whole. So, but here's something that Stephen pointed out in the study. And we've talked about this before, but this is really important. So they did this study and they said, here's a brain. We have images of brains that are normal from the past now. And here's a user 14 months after, a year, 14 months, and the brain recovers and all this stuff happens. And we don't disagree with that. That's great. Whatever.
Yeah, it looks great.
Yeah. It's kind of tea leaves. It's guessing, but hey, whatever. We see it. People move on and get healthy. But here's the problem. When they take somebody, the sample of people for the study, let's say it's 50 people, and they say, okay, you're a heavy methamphetamine user. Yes, I am. You volunteer to be in the study. Yes, I do. Okay. We're going to take scans now. And then we're going to take scans when you stop. So please stop. They stop. They take the scans post-treatment and da, 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 da. So here's the problem. It's so unbelievable. This is so unbelievable. And I think we covered this in a podcast a long time ago. It's so unbelievable because nobody pointed this out. The theory is that the more diseased and broken your brain is based on the drug use, the heavy drug use, the more compelled your use will be. In other words, the less power you have to stop. They took a group of people that were heavy users. They told them to stop, and they did in the study. So they could get the post scans, of a healthy brain eventually. The very study that they're trying to prove compelled use through brain imaging proved that they could all stop because they did.
At the height when their brain was most changed, they stopped. Okay. So they took these pictures of these scans when they stopped, and their brain was most changed at that point. And I mean, it's remarkable that now we assume that nobody in the study pointed that out, but my guess is there were researchers that did point that out and who were summarily dismissed,
or they said just ignore it. I mean, how it's such it literally disproves their theory, but they act as if that never happened, and they just keep talking the talking points about brain disease, and compulsion and compelled use and these diseased brains. Well, okay, let's say they're diseased. Let's say that there's massive damage. That's not the case, but let's say that there was in a few of the test subjects. They still stopped. So I asked Stephen when he pointed this out, I said, Steve, do you think that they chain these people to a wall?
Yeah. How do you think they made them stop? Are they locked up? Are they isolated in a room that they can't get access to people and things and drugs? I mean,
and did they do that for 14 months because they had a scan that was 14 months later to show that they had physically recovered from the drug use? And the answer was no, they didn't. These people went on with their lives and they were tracked, and that's the way it worked. So voluntarily, these people in these studies stopped at the height of brain change, at the height of the diseased state, and nobody was pointing that out. And it was ignored. And so we pointed it out and didn't ignore it.
We did. And look, there are many researchers in the past 10, 15 years who have written about this and talked about this and really figured out what you're seeing in these brain scans. Anything that becomes habituated, what you're seeing in the brain scans is learning. Okay. When you learn how to, before you can drive a car, they could take scans of your brain, and then you learn how to drive a car, and the scans will look a little bit different when you're driving a car. Okay. As you habituate anything, we're geared towards habituation as a means of being efficient, as a means of learning, how we learn language, how we learn musical instruments, or learn any kind of skill set, is going to make it more efficient for you to do it. And the same thing happens with substance use.
That's right.
And anything that we set our minds to learning.
That's right. So in the case of drug use, the reason it's allowed to get muddy is because, unlike driving a car, which is external to you, you're driving a car, right? A substance gets put in your body. So that's why I pointed out early on that the active placebo of being drunk and high and ingesting a substance and having an experience physically adds a level of complexity to the situation that makes the water murky. And then all these myths can be dropped into that pool and people feel broken.
Yeah.
So we have to be very careful about identifying what the drug does and what it doesn't do. So the drug does affect you physically. It may damage your brain. It may alter neural functioning while you're high and for a period thereafter until you detox. True.
Absolutely.
And that can give the impression that something is deeply wrong with your mind. And when they connect this, in the book, we call it learned connections. When they connect the sensations in your body and brain with an idea We call that a learned connection. And that is, the drug makes me happy. It makes me sad. But now it makes me broken. You can believe that too.
Yeah.
And it becomes your truth.
Yeah.
Now, I get guests here at the retreat all the time that feel like they do meth, right? And what do they say? It's going to take me months of post-acute
Months.
withdrawal syndrome.
Oh, that
Oh,
whole
my
idea.
biochemistry is screwed up for how long? Talk about maybe some of your females that have.
Oh my gosh. I mean, most people think that it's going to take them 6 to 12 months, because that's what they've been told, to where, they're not going to be pining away for it. They're not going to be wanting it, or their brain is going to work properly. Here's the thing about the way our minds work and work within our physiology. Our minds are 100 times more powerful than most people give them credit for. And I was actually talking to my son, who was on vacation, and he got a really bad sunburn, and he got sick. And he started to convince himself that he was having some kind of allergic reaction, and his throat literally started closing up. And he told me, after we picked him up from the airport last night, he goes, and then I remembered something that you'd said. And he goes, I thought I was creating it. And so I started to envision in my own mind that it wasn't happening. If he had told me that was happening, I would have been like, go to the ER. Oh my God. I'm not somebody that's going to be like, oh, that's your mind. But the reason I'm telling this story is, he goes, Mom, I was creating it, because I was envisioning in my mind that he's allergic to a lot of things, that I was having some kind of allergic reaction, even though I knew there was nothing. And he goes, and then I started thinking, no, you've just got a cold and a bad sunburn, and you feel like crap, and nothing bad is happening to you. You're going to be, he goes, I took some Benadryl and I went to bed and I was fine. And so anybody that's being honest knows that you've talked yourself into certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Like in your own mind, you've talked yourself into big things, bigger than this idea of post-acute withdrawal. Yeah. So you can believe whatever you want. You can believe that I am going to struggle with this for the next 6 months, and it's just the way it's going to be. And then everything that happens
corroborates that.
Exactly. It's called confirmation bias. Yeah. You will look for the things, and I've talked about this in recent podcasts. You will look for the things that make it real, and you will discount the things that don't. And so it's important to kind of check yourself and be like, what if I framed it in my own mind that maybe that's not real. And maybe I'm going to look for confirmation bias that I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
And you will see that evidence too if you look for it.
Oh, that is a great point. You are what you think.
Yes.
And so please discard the brain disease farce.
It literally has been disproven over and over and over again. So if you're struggling, go to appendix. All of our appendixes have all of that research, that starting with Appendix A, which is the loss of control. Dr. Carl Hart's work is remarkable. We talk about it in Appendix A quite a bit, where he shows that nobody is compelled to use. Nobody ever loses control, no matter how far down they've gone, no matter how compelled they feel. That nobody's ever out of control. The priming dose studies show that over and over and over again. This research has been redone and shown to be real. And then Appendix B is the disease model, where we just debunk it. We talk about it for what it is, which is its roots started in this idea that we have to destigmatize.
Yeah.
Heavy substance use
by making it a disease. That's compassionate. Isn't it more compassionate to say to somebody, hey, did you know that you're completely capable of moving past all this nightmare you're living?
That you're not like you. Isn't it much more compassionate to tell somebody, yeah, you may have developed this habit of heavy drinking, but you know what? You can break that habit, and you can actually learn how to drink how to take it or leave it, how to truly drink without a problem. I mean, I think that's pretty damn compassionate.
Well, yeah, the compassion is knowing that you're the solution.
Or how about this? Isn't it more compassionate to tell somebody, is it more compassionate to say, as treatment does, you know what, your dopamine's broken now and nothing else is going to feel good to you ever again, as good as drugs felt to you? Or is it more compassionate to tell people that that's total nonsense and that you can feel really awesome and wonderful abstinent, that there's all these other experiences.
And in a matter of days.
Yes.
In a matter of days, sleep for 3 days, eat a good meal, get up, go for a walk, and start your day and your life over. If you know that you can do that, how wonderful is that? Because ultimately, that's the only solution.
Yes,
is you.
Yes. So, and here's the thing about stigma. It's the craziest thing. It's stigmatizing. Intoxication is what's stigmatized in our society. So, I mean, and here, if you want an example of it, this poor newscaster, it's now national news, here locally to us, was on the air totally inebriated on Saturday. And so embarrassing. And now it's trending on all social media. And I feel like if you don't think that's stigmatized, I mean, first of all, she's probably going to lose her job. She's been suspended. I'm sure they're going to force her into a terrible treatment program. I heard a rumor that she had already been forced into treatment once. So is it any wonder that if she's been to treatment already, that she showed up drunk on air, believing that she's broken
and powerless?
Powerless. So, if you're watching this, I'm not even going to give her name because I don't want to do that to her. But if you found us, we can help you, by the way. So that's, it's trending because there is a stigma on intoxication for a 40 something or 50 something woman. Can't be out in public drunk. That's just the way it is, without being forced into treatment. Right. About somebody thinking that she's got a problem. So it didn't decrease stigma, is what I'm saying.
Right. Calling a non-disease a disease is
it labels you forever.
Well, it's wrong.
Yeah.
It's
what's more stigmatizing than having to, like, you've been abstinent for 20 years, but having to walk around calling yourself an alcoholic or an addict.
Right. In the book, we talk about if your daughter was going to marry a guy that has a disease called alcoholism, if they polled you, would you want that? And
right. Most people don't want that.
No, they don't. Polled.
Even if the person is sober, they're like, oh, no. He's a ticking time bomb.
I think that's right. So I think it was 79%. Now we're in class yesterday and I said, what, 21% said, yeah, I want my daughter to marry an alcoholic.
You know who they were? They were the people that are in recovery too.
I know.
That makes them a better person. They're brave and courageous. Now, look at, I'm not anybody that's stopped a heavy substance use problem. I'm not mocking you like you're not brave and courageous somehow. But everybody has their battles in life, right?
Yeah.
But just, by virtue of anybody that betters themselves in any way, shape, or form, I think is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So
but it's not hero status, it's life.
It's just life. Like just everybody, every single person who's ever lived and will ever live has struggles.
That's right. It's just life.
It's just the way it is. And the people with substance use problems are no different than people with any other problems that they struggle with. It's behaviors are what they are, but they are all, I can't even speak today. We are always in control.
That's right.
Right. In our mind. Right.
So I think that what we need to do is let go of the disease model, let go, because it's not true. Let go of the brain disease model, because that's really not true.
Mm-hmm.
And know that we change our brain all the time, endlessly, constantly, based on our behavior, our thoughts, our desires. And the good news is if we fill our body with all kinds of weird poisons and things like that, the body generally comes out okay in the end. We're pretty resilient physically, genetically. Of course, if you have other ailments, that may not be true, but in general. So that's all good news. That's all good news.
It is great news.
It's super empowering, and you can just move on with your life. If you don't understand this, read our book, get the membership. We can teach it to you. It's video tutorials. If you're struggling horribly, come to the retreat. You saw the ads on the end of the podcast. So,
well, I want to just go in another direction very quickly that is related to this, and that is you can absolutely. We're also not saying that people don't feel powerless and compelled at times.
of course,
we have never said we have never said that that's not real, that feeling isn't real. Of course it is.
That's right.
We felt that way about many different things in our lives at different points in our lives. Yep. Okay. So, but what we're saying is it's a feeling. And just because you feel that way, the way you break yourself out of that is to allow for the possibility that you are in control.
Yep.
And then run that experiment, run that test, and say, I can stop this.
Right. And that you have the capacity, the capacity, you were born with it, to change your mind about a subject, to be able to learn new information, have new thoughts, which leads to new behaviors, which leads to a new life.
Yeah.
So that's what this podcast is all about, is giving you the information so that you're empowered to say, wait a minute, I don't have to believe that anymore.
Yeah.
I don't have to feel totally hopeless. There was a time in my life, 2 times, where I had suicide attempts where I felt like there was no way I could survive. Yeah. So I get it. And I know Michelle does too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So please, if you're listening to this and you're trying to solve a substance use problem, don't give up, but believing in the disease model can actually be deadly. And as it was for our guest who overdosed, I also had an alcohol overdose. Mark and I talked about this yesterday when I was in college, and I didn't even know at that point in my life that you could overdose on alcohol. But I had bought into the idea that I was an alcoholic already. And so I almost felt as if I could drink as much as I wanted, and that I had a really high tolerance, and I like the idea that you're out of control kills people. The idea that that's real.
Yeah.
It really does. And
it breeds hopelessness.
It does. So our goal is to, in our lifetime, and hopefully we have about 30 years left, is to change the way people view addiction and to let everyone know that nobody is ever out of control. Not ever, no matter how out of control you feel.
Yep. And no matter how much your brain has changed.
That's right. That's right.
That's what their studies prove.
Yes, that is exactly right. So with that said, I think we've covered this.
Yeah. All right, everybody, take care.
Thank you so much for listening and watching. Like us, give us a good rating on wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, that helps.
That really does help. Share this with people that you think need the information or can benefit from the information, and check out the Freedom Model International membership at online.thefreedommodel.org. Check out all of our other services. Our goal is to provide a solution for everyone.
That's right.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Hey, everyone. Michelle here. I'm so excited to let you know about Freedom Model International membership. Get support as you deprogram from the 12 steps and the shackles of addiction recovery. For a low monthly membership fee, you get the Freedom Model online program, which includes our books, our audiobooks, workbooks, and all the additional lessons. You also get the Freedom Model for the Family online program as well. You will get a live members-only 2-hour question and answer webinar with Mark and myself the last Wednesday of every month. And each week, we're going to add a new video lesson. We call this the What We Learned This Week series. Lastly, we also have the Freedom Model International monthly newsletter, where we're going to tackle the current events and the latest research for you. All this for just $39.95 per month. You can stay a member for as long as you need, and you can suspend or cancel your subscription whenever you're ready. Go to online.thefreedommodel.org to sign up today.